Hello friends and welcome to the Southern Mountain Kitchen. Today we're making cheese ravioli with meat sauce. So in a large pan we are going to coat the bottom with about 2 tablespoons of olive oil. To this we're going to add 1/4 of a cup of onions that have been cut up, and then 2 cloves of garlic that have been minced. And we're going to cook this in the olive oil for a few minutes, so that way we make them a little bit more tender, a little bit better for the sauce, and get all the flavors mixed together. So I would cook this for about 3 to 4 minutes just to give it a head start on anything else going in the pan. And that way you do have a chance for your onions to start caramelizing a little bit, get a little bit more flimsy, a little bit more workable with your sauce. So stir them up as you go, so that way we can make sure that they are completely mixing with the garlic and the oil and getting the flavor completely through. Once we get to a point where we feel that they've cooked enough, we're going to add 1 pound of ground beef. So once you've got these completely cooked through, you're going to want to push them to one side of the pan to make sure that they are ready for your ground beef. Now, as you're putting your beef into the pan, we're going to work this through the onions and through the garlic and the olive oil. So we want to break it up as small as possible. And as the ground beef browns, it's easier to break up. So just keep mixing it around your pan as it's cooking and incorporate the onions and garlic into it as you go. And that way, you're not only cooking your vegetables, like your onions and everything, but you're also getting the ground beef broken up the way you want it to. Now, as you cook this, you're going to have to add a little bit of salt to it. So we're going to go for 3/4 teaspoon of salt, and then we're going to add 1/2 teaspoon of pepper, just to give the ground beef a little bit of flavor. So go ahead and chop that into your ground beef, so that way all of your seasonings are making their way through, and start incorporating the onions in at this point, because your beef should start browning on the bottom, because if your pan was hot like mine was, it will start doing this. I'm cooking like a medium high. That way I can make sure that everything is going to cook through. One thing about this is, everybody's stovetop is a little bit different. So if you think that going high is better for you because yours doesn't cook as hot, then go on up to high. It's just whatever is browning your beef without burning it. So judge for yourself on that point, because I know that on my stovetop it kind of cooks a little under sometimes. So that way I turn the temperature up a little bit more. But once you get it sizzling and you're chopping it up and you're breaking this into smaller pieces, you are in the right direction. The key to this is to keep turning it as you're chopping it, so that way the underside is pulled up and then the pink part gets turned under, so that way it can cook. Now, one thing you will notice when you do cook ground beef is that depending on the type of ground beef, you get some of it leaves a little bit more oil in your pan than others. You get a little greasy effect. If you have too much grease in it, you can pull this to the side and scoop it out with a spoon, because we don't want a lot of grease in what we're making. So if you have to do that, go right ahead. As you can see at this point, my ground beef has browned and I have chopped it up quite a lot. And all my onions and the garlic are completely mixed through. So it's actually just the way I want to have it before I put in a spaghetti sauce. So what we're going to use is a large spaghetti sauce. I bought a jar, which I never buy the jar kind, but I did this time. And I think it was like 24 ounces. But they have so many different flavors you can use. Sometimes I will go cheese or traditional. Being that I'm going to add so much cheese to what I'm making, I kind of went with a traditional thing here. And on top of this, I'm adding 1/2 teaspoon of Italian seasoning. And then, I know some people are like, oh God, is he adding sugar? Yes, I'm putting sugar in it again. I'm going to use about 2 tablespoons of sugar. If anything, it cuts down on the acidity and it just makes a better, sweeter taste to the tomatoes. You don't have to put it in. If you don't want to, don't. This is actually what you're cooking for yourself if you're making this. I put it in just because it gives it kind of like a marinara edge, and I like that. And it tastes really good when you're making ravioli. And that's just the way that I prefer to do it. So anyway, we're going to cook this spaghetti sauce in for probably about 5 minutes, and then we're going to set it aside. Because, you know, your meat and everything is already cooked. You're just warming up the sauce you poured into it. And we're going to prepare in a minute to actually make our cheese ravioli. Before you move your pot off, if you feel like you do a good turnover of the sauce and the meat in the pan, set it aside. And now we're going to start with a medium to large pan of water, which we're going to add some salt and some olive oil to. And what we're going to do for the ravioli is, if you go to the frozen food section, you can get cheese ravioli in a bag. And generally this is like one kind of medium-sized bag is the one I use. And in it, you're going to get probably almost 30 raviolis out of it. So once your water is hot enough, and mine was before I started doing this and took the lid off, I'm just going to go ahead and add in all the ravioli. But I'm putting it in by hand. I'm just not dumping it in there. I like to put it in to where, at least as it sinks down, some of the ones that might be stuck together will separate a bit. And we are going to stir this to make sure they do separate. But once they're in the water and your water is up to a hot temperature, it probably won't take more than about 5 minutes or so to cook these, because on the bag it says ready in 4.5 minutes. Well, they're pretty close. I mean, with mine, I think I probably had them in there for just a little over 5 minutes until everything was starting to float to the top. That way you can tell your ravioli is done. If it's coming up to the top of the water, it's pretty much done. And I have this nifty little scooper deal, which I use to get my ravioli out with. So you're going to need a pan. I think it's like a 9x13. I've sprayed it with cooking spray because I don't want these sticking. And what I'm going to do is add my meat sauce to the bottom of the pan only. I'm not mixing this through. I'm just getting it all the way to the bottom of the pan, and then I'm going to even it out from side to side, corner to corner. Because when you go to scoop into this later to pull it out after it's cooked, you will notice that you're getting the meat sauce along with the ravioli, along with the cheese I'm going to put on top of this. You need to preheat your oven to 350 degrees, because once this is assembled, it's going to stay in there for a good 20-25 minutes. And when the cheese is actually melted and starting to do that little browning effect on top and you see bubbling underneath, you know it's done. So now that your meat sauce is in and spread out, we're going to bring the ravioli in, and I'm using my little scooper deal because I want to get this in without bringing in a lot of water. We don't want the water to come with it. So go ahead and bring them over a bit at a time until you've actually covered the meat sauce. And as you can see, the ones that were frozen together did separate in the water like I said they would. They're really easy to deal with, and this is a quick and easy meal for the fact that it's really not a lot of effort to make it, but it has such a great taste when you're done. Now, on top of this, we're going to put about 2 cups of mozzarella cheese, and we're going to work from corner to corner, side to side, covering everything, because we want to make sure that all of the pasta is covered. You don't want it sticking above for the most part, because if you do, it might actually harden in the oven, and you know, it's when tough pasta's there, it's not a joy to eat. So go ahead and continue putting your cheese on. Make sure your oven is up to 350 before we're ready to put this in, because pretty much this is the deal. And when it comes out of the oven, it looks something like this. And this is a great meal for your whole family, for the fact that there is so much of it. You can feed several people from this. I hope you liked this video. If you did, please like and subscribe. And I hope you'll check out my cookbook, which is available on Amazon and in stores worldwide. Have a great day.